No, it's okay, it's okay. You are already... Ditemi voi. Dovete accendere il microfono. Già microfonato?
You're going to speak in Italian?
No, we're going to speak in English.
Then.
We speak in English, is okay
All
for
right,
you?
that's fine.
Okay. Maybe it's better.
Where are you off to next after?
I go home tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. We are starting right now. Thank you. Please take your seat. Thanks.
One of the satellites. The Suez Road.
All right, yeah. Very nice. That's by the new capital.
Okay. I don't know if it works. No, it doesn't.
This is
Can we...
what is referred to...
Dobbiamo accendere il microfono. Eccoci qua. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. I ask you to keep your seat. And I ask you to be in silent for the next 30 minutes, if you can. Here we are with Mr. Sameh Hassan SHOUKRY, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. Mr. SHOUKRY is a long-time diplomat. He has been ambassador to the United States since 2008 till 2012. And before, he was 2005-2008 representative of Egypt to the United Nations in Geneva. And he's our guest today. And with me, my pal is Nicolas from the Economist. He's a Middle East affair correspondent for the Economist. So Nicolas and me will try to understand something more about Egypt and his point of view on the current dynamics in the region of the Mediterranean. I'll ask Minister SHOUKRY to start with a general point of view. Then we'll arrive to the real questions. He's a long-time diplomat, so he's very diplomatic and will be very diplomatic today. So thank you, Mr. SHOUKRY.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm delighted to be here. And of course, I take into account the positive nature of the title of the session. And I hope that we are on a positive track because the region of the Eastern Mediterranean, of the Mediterranean at large, of the Middle East has reached the abyss in terms of the dangers that surround it and the consequences of policies and developments over the last 7 years that have been quite detrimental to the security and the aspirations of the people of the region. We are living at a time where the institutions of governance have been severely affected. The rise of sectarian strife has increased. The terrorist threat and the fundamentalist ideology and its circumvention of the nature of the region and its inclusiveness over centuries has been challenged, as well as the intervention of extra-regional powers, whether foreign to the region or adjacent to the region, has complicated the situation and has been on the basis of influence rather than on the basis of cooperation. This has severely complicated and raised the level of antagonism and the potential of an escalating conflict. All of these are the status of affairs, but they should lead us now to an effort, a greater effort in cooperation between both the southern and the northern flanks of the Mediterranean to try to change this dynamics and to try to extract through cooperation, through the exchange of experience and abilities, to regain the equilibrium and the strategic balance that has been lost over these years. We have the successful military operations in Iraq and Syria to rid those two countries of the Daesh threat, but unfortunately we saw that there was a relaxation in how that was achieved in Syria, which allowed for foreign fighters to flee areas of military confrontation. And we had warned, and I think our warnings should be heeded with greater effectiveness, that this would cause a resurgence of the terrorist threat in Africa, in Libya, in Sinai, in Chad and Mali and other areas. We see the rise of the presence of foreign fighters and the establishment of terrorist bases and camps in sub-Saharan Africa, which is of great consequence and causes a severe threat to the security of Egypt and the rest of our African brethren. I think I will rely on this very brief intervention and to give the time to your questions.
First question, Nicolas.
Thank you very much, Minister. I suppose we should start with the tragic attack in northern Sinai and ask you what response you're expecting from the Egyptian government. I think the President, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, said that gave license to the military to use all brute force necessary in a time frame of 3 months. What are you expecting to see in those 3 months, and how is it going to differ from what went before?
Well, I think it's quite apparent the nature of the terrorist threat that we have persevered and has caused the loss of life of countless Egyptians, both in the military and innocent civilians. But let me again emphasize that when you say northern Sinai, it is actually northeastern Sinai. The area of operations is a mere 5% of the overall land space of the Sinai. So it is in a relatively secluded area, and I think it should be perceived as such so that there isn't any false impression of a wider scale in the ability of the terrorist organizations to operate in the rest of the Sinai. Undoubtedly, the most recent attack, which caused the loss of life of 311 Egyptians at prayer, at worship, including around 27 children, is a barbaric and unacceptable in any form, and I think it should reinforce not only our resolve, but the resolve of the international community to come to the assistance of Egypt fully and to recognize that this danger is a collective danger, one that must be met outright with the necessary force, that there is with the same degree of resolve that ISIS or Daesh was met with in Iraq. It was a military activity, and it is only through military activity that you can impact and eradicate this menace. The ideology behind it is non-inclusive, it is non-yielding, it is exclusive, and it is violent, and there is no way to actually address it except through military force, and to do so with the help of the international community, with the help of both your Mediterranean and our traditional partners. You will be surprised to know that there are surveillance equipment, IED detection equipment that is restricted to Egypt, and we have to ask the question, why is that the case, and why is there not greater support in providing Egypt the military assistance it needs, the high degree of intelligence coordination by all our Mediterranean and strategic partners. This will continue to be a focus of our attention. It is a strong desire of our people to regain the security and the tranquility that has always been a fundamental aspect of Egyptian society, its inclusiveness, its nature, its departure from any form of sectarianism or religious intolerance. And this is the nature of Egypt, which I think is consistent with the nature of the Eastern Mediterranean and its ancient cultures. Having said that, that doesn't in any way preclude that the Egyptian government has very important projects for the development of the Sinai as well. This development is not, and again, here I emphasize, to deal with terrorism is not through whatever economic projects that might be provided in the Sinai. The economic projects are projects that are provided for the indigenous community, Egyptian community in the Sinai, because that is the responsibility of the government, whether in Sinai or anywhere else, is to develop and to provide job opportunities and healthcare and welfare to the population of the Sinai. And it will advertently also provide a shelter and immunization of that population from the potential of being attracted because of social conditions to the ideology. But having said that, we have to be very clear that there is no way that you can revert the ideological commitment once that the ideas and the mindset of individuals has been seduced to this very dangerous tendency. It is very difficult to do other than to have a head-on military confrontation and to eradicate them.
I mean, if I understand from what you're saying, it's that you're going to see essentially more of the same, which has been a very heavy military campaign in northern Sinai, in northeastern Sinai, where you've seen some towns erased, you've seen around Rafah, or where you've seen populations cut off from their means of economic survival, whether it's with Gaza or with Israel or even with Egypt because of the curfews and it's a closed military zone. And at some point, I suppose it raises the question, is this policy working, or do you need to deliver on some of the economic projects that you've talked about? Yeah. Do you need to find a way of...
If I can add, how can you balance military campaign, military activity with economic development of Sinai?
Again, there is no way to make that correlation. I think that is a wrong and fallacious one to make. And again, I take point with what you referred to as the any form of removal of any communities. I think the reason for the length in which this operation has taken has been the government's being careful and being as surgical as possible so as not to inflict damage. But that does not in any way lessen the degree of our commitment to address this issue, as has been addressed in Iraq or in Syria. There was a military campaign supported by an international coalition. I believe Italy was part of that coalition, along with the United States and the United Kingdom and others. And that was a military operation that did not have, as part of its components, any form of economic revival of the areas that Daesh had, or ISIS had under its control. This is the nature of terrorism. But as I said, the economic development program in the Sinai is related to raising the economic conditions of the population, as is in the case in any other part of Egypt. In the Sinai, because of the infiltration of the terrorists, what we are hoping is that also through these economic developments, we will immunize this community from the unemployment that might make them more prey to and more susceptible to conditions of recruitment. But otherwise, I think that the military campaign will continue. It will take into account the well-being of Egyptians living in the Sinai, but it will be determined in that it will target and protect the innocent lives from any further loss.
Do you ask any help for this military campaign, international help?
Well, I just mentioned that we expect help. We expect
What
help,
kind of help?
not in any form of intervention, but in the provision of the equipment, of the surveillance, of the monitoring, of the exchange of intelligence.
Not direct involvement.
No,
on the
hardly.
ground.
Hardly. Our military is capable and is confident that it has the dedication and the commitment to do the job, but it does need the advanced technical know-how that is available in our partners in the north of the Mediterranean and in the United States and other areas.
Okay, let me bring for a second to Libya. In Libya, a few hours ago, the representative of United Nations, of Egypt at United Nations in New York said, pay attention because the terrorists in Sinai, they are gaining money from the trafficking in human beings, migrants. You know that the door of migration in Africa is Libya, in Europe is Italy. So we have a very special relationship. Do you think it's real? Do you think that this trafficking in human beings brings money, brings financing in for ISIS?
Most certainly. Our intelligence information leads us to believe that this is not only terrorist organizations financing their activities and providing for their resources in weaponry and ammunition through trafficking in human beings, through trafficking in arms, and through drug trade. All of these areas are utilized by terrorist organizations to provide themselves monetary gain and thereby maintain their ability to wage war on their victims. And this is one of the areas that we have to work with greater forcefulness on and to cut the flow of illegal immigration or the trafficking in human beings, whether by terrorist organizations or by organized crime. Organized crime has taken advantage of this, and I think we've seen the consequences in Libya rising because of the detention centers that have been established. And this is why Egypt has always been opposed to detention centers. This is why Egypt has hosted and is hosting currently 5 million refugees integrated into its society, taking full advantage of its subsidies systems and its welfare systems because of the moral responsibility, but also that we do not believe that detention centers are a humane or an acceptable way to deal with people who are fleeing basically conditions, whether economic or political conditions in their own countries, who fear for their lives or who are trying to achieve a better livelihoods. This is a matter that has to be addressed in a comprehensive manner. It has to be addressed at the level of the states of origin, transit, and destination, and it has to be a holistic approach with the cooperation of all those involved.
Nicolas? No, about Libya, if you want to save some more minutes on Libya.
I think there's a degree of confusion about what Egypt's policy in Libya is. Is it supporting the current administration? Is it supporting different armed groups? Is it supporting Khalifa Haftar? Could you clarify a little bit about
Haftar? We are more with Raji.
Are you? I would think that if that is your policy, I can only say that we are with everyone. We have no distinctions between any of our Libyan brothers. I hope to remind you, and I think if Dr. Ghassan Salamo is here, he would remind you also that the basic structure of what is the effort now undertaken to amend the political agreement was basically framed in Cairo in terms of the meetings that we held to build confidence among Libyans from the east, west, and south, and were able to define the 4 areas of the political agreement, and which is now the main effort of the UN envoy. So it has been Egypt's involvement and Egypt's facilitation of the political process. The Sukhairat agreement or the political agreement would not have been reached was it not for Egypt's direct involvement and presence on the margins of the meetings of the Libyans there. Egypt is currently undertaking the reunification of the Libyan army with meetings of current and previous military personnel who have, I think, been able to make from Cairo a venue to build confidence among them, and are now in the process of formulating and elaborating on a more structured approach. And I think this will be fundamental in regaining an important institution and its ability to provide the security for the Libyan people and to provide the deterrence and the eradication of the terrorist threat that is present. Egypt's role has been to facilitate, to discuss these issues and to encourage all of the participants. So we have opened the dialogue with our brothers in Misrata. We are eager to widen the cooperation and the dialogue between Egypt and the various political entities in Libya, and to provide also an opportunity for them to take Cairo as a venue for exchange of views between them and building a consensus. So on all of these counts, I think Egypt's role has been positive, has been benevolent, and continues to be absolutely fundamentalist. That doesn't mean we don't have strong ties to Field Marshal Haftar or to the chairman or the Speaker of the House of Representatives and other parliamentarians, as we have relations and have received members of the State Council. President Sarraj has been to Cairo and will be in Cairo very shortly, and our cooperation with the UN envoy and our support of his mission, I think he can attest to that, and I'm sure you will have an opportunity to ask him directly.
Could I just go back to another area where you've been equally, as you say, inclusive, which is Gaza, where you found a way of hosting different factions, including Hamas, the Palestinian Islamist faction, and you've adopted a very pragmatic approach. You've found ways of negotiating arrangements, of negotiating border deals, of trying to play a role in reconciliation. Why not apply that same pragmatism in Cairo, and why can't you reach out to your own Islamists in the same way?
Again, I think you might ask that question of the international coalition. Why didn't they do that when it came to ISIS? I didn't see anyone calling for inclusivity or political dialogue with terrorist organizations that were killing, that were raping, that were pillaging the communities of Iraq and Syria. This is a totally fallacious presentation that this radical ideology is susceptible to any form of agreement. I think that the president on many occasions has made it clear that Egypt is for all Egyptians, but that does not mean that we will in any way contemplate a dialogue with people who lift their arms, who kill our civilians, who bomb our mosques, or who perpetrate illegal and violent activities. I think we have to deal with issues in the same manner. We can't have a security approach when it comes to terrorist activities in Europe, as we have seen in various parts of Europe, and then we are asked to find a political accommodations with those who raise arms in the face of our population.
What about Egypt and, let's say, democracy? Egypt is on its way to a full democratization. It's still not a full democracy.
Is anyone a full democracy in the world? I wonder. And I think that we can have a long debate. But certainly Egypt and its modern history has always been at the forefront, and especially in these last 7 years. And I think it is the ultimate democracy when the population takes matters in its own hands, and in the last 6 years has been able to utilize that democracy by going to the streets and deposing 2 governments. I think that is the ultimate form of democracy. But again, we recognize that democracy is a matter of institutionalization. It's a matter of finding the balance and between the powers and the separation of powers, and instilling the values that I think we are all closely attached to, in how to proceed in the rule of law, and in the separation of powers, and in the transfer of power through the ballot box and through an electoral process. We have instilled those in our constitution after the experiences of this last 6 years since the revolution of the 25th of January and subsequently the revolution of the 30th of June. But we need, of course, to refine, and we need that the society takes on board and proceeds to develop its abilities and to develop its capacities in refining its democratic practices in a parliament which is composed of representatives who are able to advocate and promote their ability to chart the course for the society. So this is a societal issue that has to be incremental. It is always a project that continues to be refined in the most sophisticated societies. We certainly are somewhat burdened by situation in the region, by the events, by the conflicts that have ensued, by the economic conditions, but also by the need to deal with the issues of providing the services, providing the economic viability, providing the housing, the healthcare, and other main needs of the population. And this is a holistic package, I think, where we have to proceed as the society is able to absorb all of the aspirations. The values are, I think, consistent, and how we apply them is based on the population and the society's ability to move forward.
Nicolas.
Egypt did perhaps have its freest and fairest elections in 2012. You've got forthcoming presidential elections now. Do you think, or coming up next year, do you think that former Prime Minister Ahmed Shafiq should be allowed to participate, to contest those elections?
I see no reason that would, from a legal point of view, in any way restrict him from doing so. I say that as a layman. I'm not sure. I know that he had some issues in the judiciary. I'm not sure whether those have been resolved or not. But in principle, anyone that has the ability in terms of the regulations of the law is certainly free to present himself in an electoral process to the population. And it is, as in any society, up to the electorate to decide.
Okay, as you know, Mr. Shoukry, in Italy there is a strong impact on the Italian public opinion talking about Giulio Regeni. And Egypt promises strict commitment in making everything clear. Still, it's not clear.
Well, it's a very tragic issue, one that I think we have indicated on various occasions. The degree of pain, we recognize the pain it has caused in Italy, but I hope Italians will also recognize the pain it has caused to Egyptians. This was a very violent issue that shocked many and created greater sensitivity because of the affinity that exists between Egyptians and Italians. We have been two nations that have had an exchange and a closeness in terms of relations, and when issues of this nature arise, it has a very strong impact. So again, it is a very sorrowful event. It is one that has had an impact on our relationship, and it is one that we have every determination to do everything possible to come to a conclusion that is satisfactory to both sides within our legal process. I think the cooperation between our Prosecutor General and the Prosecutor General of Rome has been exceptional. This has been maybe the first time that the Egyptian prosecutor has been as open, as cooperative, allowing for an external representation to go hand in hand, to be provided the data and to be provided the investigative paperwork, and will continue and is determined, the Prosecutor General, who is independent from the government. But we as a government do encourage him to continue on this level, an exceptional level of cooperation, because of the importance that the Italian-Egyptian relations and the benefits of this relationship to both sides. Sure. And we don't want it to be marred by this incident, and at the same time we recognize its impact and are very affected by it, and again convey the condolences because of it.
Speaking with the prosecutor in Rome, for example, still we don't have two things, they say. The images from the camera out of the subway station in front of Giulio's house, the first thing missing. And the second one is the complete papers of the investigation. Do you think there will be a day, and when, in your opinion, when we'll have this material that is basic for our investigation?
The material as far as the investigative process has reached is available to the prosecutor. Whatever has been additional since the last time that the two prosecutors met will be provided during the next meeting. As for the images, as you know, the issue was that those images were erased, the automated system that did so, and we have gone to great lengths in cost to contract a European company to be able to utilize its software abilities and its technical abilities to somehow regain the deleted information. And once that company has finished its work, it will be provided to the Egyptian Prosecutor General, and he will share the findings with his counterpart.
1 month.
Well, we hope so. It's, again, it's a purely technical issue. It's up to the company to have exhausted all of its abilities and to provide us with a detailed account. And again, we do so very willingly and have put into this a great deal of...
It's a commitment.
Of course, it's a commitment that has
been...
It's an
official commitment.
It's a commitment that has been indicated, but then as a government, I am committed to the level of cooperation, but as implementation, it is the independent prosecutor general who makes the final determination in this area.
Nicolas.
There seems to be a fresh attempt by the American administration to have another stab at bringing peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Egypt has been playing quite an important role in offering its services. What do you make of this latest process? Is there any prospect of a deal, of a plan? How will it differ from previous plans? And what do you rate of its chances for success?
We have commended the American administration, the American president, on his determination to find a resolution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and encourage the U.S. to continue in those efforts and to provide ourselves as facilitators in whatever way we can, whether to the Israelis or to the Palestinians, and in encouragement of both the United States and our European partners to fully endorse the principles to end the conflict. And I think these principles have been set and are well recognized by the long history of the negotiated process between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
You're expecting a conference in Sharm el-Sheikh in the coming weeks, months?
We can say that we are expecting, other than that we understand that the U.S. The U.S. envoy to the Middle East peace process is undertaking to formulate a new presentation, a new plan that he will present to the two sides. And once that plan is in place and once we are appraised of it, we will have the opportunity to coordinate with the United States and with the Palestinians and the Israelis to try to encourage and move the process forward. But again, it is incumbent on their negotiations and their ability to work with the United States as facilitator, with others, Egypt, Jordan, and others, to try to come to a settlement that will be a game changer in the region and provide the opportunity for a new Middle East.
Two short questions, one for you and one for me.
I was surprised on a recent trip to Cairo to see how much nostalgia there now seemed to be for an era when tens of thousands of Italians and hundreds of thousands of Greeks and Jews and others were living in Egypt, and regret that they'd been forced out, and just sort of nostalgia for this belle epoque when Egypt was integrated into the rest of the Mediterranean, not just politically or militarily or through security ties, but through family ties. And do you share that regret? Do you share a sense of sadness that so many foreigners and indigenous population were were forced out, and could you actually see a more inclusive future for Egypt emerge?
Well, I think nostalgia is a human condition, and it will continue to be so. It's always greener in the past, but I think by the title of this seminar, we should look to the future. And let me tell you that we had a very interesting visit by some of our Greek brothers recently to Alexandria, Greeks of Egyptian origin and descent, who came and have shown every desire, as has the Egyptian people shown every hospitality to them. Egypt is an open country where I think we have always treated our guests with a great deal of hospitality, where we have provided Egypt as a safe haven for Greeks and Italians at times when conditions in Europe were not so beneficial, as we do now to our African brethren, also receiving these very large numbers of immigrants to Egypt. Egypt is a country of inclusivity, where we have a long history, where we might be the original melting pot. We have incorporated Greeks, Romans, Turks, a variety of nationalities that have all come and have all gained from this association. We certainly look at ourselves as multifaceted, whether we are Arabs, Egyptians, Africans, Mediterraneans, and we pride ourselves on this ability and our receptivity.
We have 10 seconds.
Please.
Yeah, what do you
No, I
want?
was going to ask you, just to follow up on that, whether you thought that that period of Nasserism, of Arab nationalism, when these communities were forced out, was that in hindsight a mistake?
Well, if you provide me another 30 minutes, we might discuss the issue. But no, I think it's counterproductive, again, to look at the past and to try to evaluate it. This isn't the venue for that, but the actual thing is that Egypt is there, and I think it's stabilizing force. It is a receptive force. It is a benevolent one. It is an inclusive society with a great deal of tolerance and desire to cooperate, desire for its own benefit, but for the benefit of its region, the benefit of its wider community. I think the commonality of our values and the human heritage that we represent in our ancient civilization can only be an extension to the future. And this is what we seek, and this is what we hope our partners and friends, especially in the ancient civilizations of the Mediterranean, will also help us to achieve.
And we expect a video for Regeni, okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Minister Hassan SHOUKRY. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.